parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man. We getting money. That ain't our stilo.
Boozy is catching fire right now. People in the streets are straight up turning their backs on him. Word spread that he's the one who allegedly called the hit on Duke the Jeweler. And just like that, he's blacklisted from the very spot he once called home. He already got caught slipping once. And folks are saying if he dares show his face in the hood again, he might not walk away in one piece. And let's not forget, Boozy is tied in with the Mob Ties crew. That's the same circle where Duke the Jeweler lost his life playing in one of those shady dice games that also took takeoff. Now the big question everyone's whispering is, did Boozy sacrifice Duke, or is he just being set up as the fall guy in a much bigger scheme?
If anybody know me, bro, that ain't my stilo, bro. You know what I'm saying? That ain't how I get down, bro. Like, that ain't how none of my people get down.
Duke's death hit people hard because it didn't look like a random tragedy. It looked like a planned execution. But before we break down all the suspicious details, let's rewind to what actually happened. Duke had been locked into that dice game all night, rolling side by side with people he thought were his friends. But behind the smiles, were they secretly plotting? Were hand signs and signals flying around while he wasn't looking? And the real head scratcher, why would anybody even want to line Duke up in the first place? Duke wasn't just some flashy jeweler. He built his brand from the ground up with pure hustle. No shortcuts, no handouts. He crafted one-of-a-kind pieces that were grabbing attention from both up-and-coming rappers and major heavyweights in the game. Even when he left Chicago for Houston, it wasn't just a trip to chill, it was business. And who was the one that invited him out there? None other than Boozy himself, claiming he wanted to chop it up about some custom jewelry work. Duke showed up ready for business, carrying $1 million duffel stuffed with his hottest jewelry designs. He thought this trip was about leveling up his brand, but what he didn't know was this would be the final chapter of his life. And that same duffel bag, those precious designs, they'd later resurface in the most shocking way imaginable. But before we even get to that twist, we gotta dig into this dice game, because it's not just background noise, it's the smoking gun tied to Duke's death. Reports say this wasn't some friendly late-night hustle. This was a straight setup from the jump, and it was Whack 100. Yeah, someone who actually has deep street connections, who came out and confirmed what everyone was whispering. He flat out warned, if you ever get invited to a dice game in Houston, especially if it's hosted by Jay Prince, you better get gone fast, because walking away with your money, or even with your life, is slim to none. And according to Whack, that's exactly the trap Duke walked right into. He rolled the dice and paid with his life. Then Whack dropped even more gems about how the whole operation runs. Those games? They're rigged. The dice are tampered with so only Jay Prince Jr. or his Mob Ties crew can walk away winners. It's not gambling, it's organized robbery dressed up as a game. And the rule is simple. The house always wins. But on that night, somebody slipped. Somehow, Duke got his hands on the loaded dice and boom, he couldn't stop winning, stacking up hundreds like it was nothing. Just like that, he cracked their system wide open, and that's when the game turned deadly. Duke wasn't just on a winning streak, he was documenting every second of it. He had his phone out, filming himself stacking cash, laughing, and flexing like he was untouchable. At first, it looked like regular show-off vibes, but when those clips resurfaced later, people started noticing the small details in the background. Side glances, whispered conversations, hand signals, stuff that looked way too calculated to be just fun and games. And here's the kicker. Allegedly, Jay Prince takes a 30% cut from every Dice Night haul. So when Duke cracked the code and flipped the script by winning big, it wasn't just a bruised ego, it cut straight into the money flow. That's when things started to feel shady on a whole different level. See? Duke kept posting snippets of his winning streak on his phone, but when people replayed those clips frame by frame, they caught something he never realized himself. In one moment, Boozy leans back and flashes a quick signal to his nephew across the table.
He got three right, who rotate the dice. Now these dice is loaded. Tell me it's Wolf, Big Caprice, and watch this, and Little Cam are the loaded dice rotators, right? He said what? There was a situation that occurred that a certain jeweler around and got past the dice on accident and was hitting all them for a couple hundred. They got irritated about that. I ain't gonna go too far into that story because, right, boom. The only way they could get their money back was however money back. He said, but Lil Cam, Wolf, and Big...
Almost instantly, the mood in the room shifts. His nephew locks in with a hard stare. Another man pats him on the shoulder, and boom, the whole room goes ice cold. Duke went from laughing and tossing dice to sitting in the middle of a storm he didn't even see coming. Then it gets darker. Just minutes after that dice game wrapped, Duke was heading back to his car. No entourage, no bodyguards, no heavy presence around him. Just one man with a duffel bag stuffed with jewelry worth millions and stacks of cash, walking through a dim Houston parking lot. 1 minute, he's smiling, thinking about the wins he just stacked up. The next, gunshots explode in the night. But here's what makes it even harder to swallow. Why didn't Boozy, a millionaire himself, set Duke up with security, especially knowing Duke was carrying that much heat in his bag? And why didn't J. Prince Jr. have any kind of protection lined up for his so-called guests if these dice games were supposed to be friendly nights out? And that wasn't even the most twisted part, because when the police finally rolled up to the scene, what they discovered turned this from just another tragic killing into a full-blown conspiracy theory that people are still talking about today. Police were told Duke had been ambushed by a gang of robbers, but when they pulled up on the scene, what they actually found didn't make sense at all. Duke was lying in a pool of his own blood, but his chains still around his neck. Now tell me, what kind of robber shoots a man down and then walks away without grabbing the ice that's shining right in front of their face? And these weren't just any chains, these were the exact same pieces Duke had been rocking at Boozy's concert just hours earlier. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. The duffel bag. The same bag loaded with Duke's unreleased high-end jewelry designs vanished from the scene. For a moment, it was just gone. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, it turned up at Boozy's house. How did it get there? Was Duke supposed to have handed it over for safekeeping during the game? Or did Boozy somehow end up with it after everything went down? Nobody knows for sure. But what is crystal clear is that the bag made it out untouched, while Duke didn't. Boozy then hopped on live trying to push the robbery gone wrong angle, but people weren't buying it. His story was flimsy. He swore up and down that he didn't even know Duke like that, claiming Duke just left after the game. But hold up, if that's true, why did Boozy invite him to a private dice game in the first place, surrounded by his own close circle? Why would Duke even show up in Houston unless Boozy told him he wanted custom pieces made? So, on one hand, Boozy sets Duke up to flex $1 million in jewels in a high-stakes room with no security, and then turns around acting like Duke was just some random acquaintance? That math isn't mathing, and let's be honest, when Boozy went live, he didn't look smooth or confident. His face was pale, his voice shaky, like a man who had just seen a ghost. That's not the energy of someone with nothing to hide. It's the energy of somebody sitting under a spotlight, hoping nobody notices the cracks in his story.
Hey, the internet, y'all got us all the way up. We met that dude, Duke the Jeweler, the night before. We was gambling. The next day, dude followed us to the concert. When we left out the concert, we under the garage. Dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man. We getting money. That ain't our stilo. As a boss, I ain't letting that go down like that, man. This dude finna make me a piece. So y'all need to kill that. That's bad low, man. Don't put us in nothing with no bad low. It's bad low, man. This bad low, man. Straight up, this shit bad low. Kill it.
Nobody believed a single word coming out of Boozy's mouth at this point. The more he talked, the more he sounded like a man trying to cover his tracks, and the internet tore that act apart fast. Clips and interviews blew up across social feeds, and the comments went savage. One viral line summed it up. Boozy seemed to know what Duke did before and after the night, like he was watching him. That reaction matched what people were whispering, and it turned the whole thing into a feeding frenzy. Things escalated when the feds stepped in, because the smell of something rotten was real. Boozy was already on their radar for other gun issues, but once details from Duke's case started pointing right back at him, a fresh investigation opened, and investigators kept finding shady links one after another. They tracked Duke's phone, and the last ping came from Boozy's studio. No accident. Unless Duke's phone walked itself there, somebody close to Boozy had it, and that's not carelessness. That's confidence from folks who think they can outsmart the system. Then it got even darker. Forensics swept Duke's rental car and pulled prints tied to Boozy's cousin and nephew. That hand signal passed at the table? Suddenly, it read like a trigger, like the exact moment a plan went live. Duke was marked, even if he didn't know it yet. When a witness came forward, the story turned from bad to brutal. They said they were outside, smoking, when Duke walked up to his car. Everything seemed normal until Boozy's nephew jumped out like he'd been waiting in ambush. It played out like a setup scene, but this was real life. The witness says Duke swung first, trying to defend himself, but he didn't stand a chance. Seconds later, shots rang out and Duke was down, lifeless. The witness swore there was no robbery that night, no scramble for chains, because it wasn't ever about theft. It was about silencing the man who cracked a rigged game. Now, the feds aren't just asking questions, they're tearing into Boozy's life under a microscope. They're combing his businesses, his messages, and everyone in his circle. Even close family members are under scrutiny as investigators try to piece together how deep this goes. This whole thing reads like a setup from the jump, and the streets are watching every move. The more the feds dig, the more threads point back to Boozy's crew. People say the dice game lit the fuse, and now everyone wants to know who pulled the strings behind the scenes. This ain't just an investigation, it's full-blown surveillance on Boozy. They know he's gonna slip up, and when he does, they'll be waiting to grab him by the collar and lock him down. If you think that's rough, the streets are treating Boozy like a marked man. The last time he showed his face in the neighborhood he used to call home, a crew jumped him in broad daylight. Now folks are tired of watching their block turn into a war zone, and he can't even walk the streets without heavy security watching his back. Don't get it twisted, Boozy helped build this monster, and Jay Prince Jr. played a major part in creating that check-in culture. Any rapper or big name who rolls through has to show up and pay respects right away, or they catch heat. When artists touch down in Houston, Jay Prince is known to charge for protection, and if people dodge that price, the consequence can be getting set up, robbed, or worse. Is that protection or extortion dressed like a favor? The dice games are another level of danger, and they almost always end ugly. 2 weeks after Duke lost his life, Takeoff died at one of those same games. This time, he never even made it past the table. He was shot while still sitting and playing, and that ain't a coincidence. There are only so many weird overlaps before the whole thing smells cooked and corrupt. Now brands are pulling back hard, sponsors don't want the heat, and Boozy's money flow is getting choked off. His rep is ruined, and his pockets are feeling it too. The streets are watching, the feds are digging, and the whole scene ain't looking good for him. Business partners are shelving deals and pulling back fast. No one's touching his money right now. The Mob Ties crew that once had Boozy's back, they left him in the cold and let him hang while everyone watches the drama unfold. When the DJ Vlad interview dropped, everybody thought Boozy would clear it up at last. But instead, he dodged questions, stayed behind those shades, and straight up denied knowing much about Duke. The way he moved, the tone he used, the body language, fans clocked it immediately, and it didn't look good. That clip spread like wildfire, and the comments demolished him. People were blasting that he kept his sunglasses on so he wouldn't meet Vlad's eyes, like a man who won't look you in the face when he's lying. The feed filled with takes saying, "He capping, he had to be involved." And that vibe stuck. Boozy can talk all he wants, but the public's judgment shifted quick. No one's buying his lines anymore. The streets turned on him, and the feds are circling tighter every day. He sits there, shades on, quiet, as if he already feels the walls closing in, because everyone knows this ain't just rumor anymore. And yeah, last one included for asking to subscribe, like, share, comment, and see you on the next one.